Hey guys, I'm Viper and welcome to a brand new video, and today I'm going to be talking about racing game speedruns. However, I will not be doing this on my own. In fact, I have a few nice little friends on my side, as you'll find out. Say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so the people that are with me at the moment is we've got Lone, Leviathan, Joseph and Dan, aka Mushy Gaming, as he's known on YouTube. Some of you guys may know who Dan is, or the other three who are on Twitch and on YouTube as well. But for today's subject, like I said, it's racing game speedruns, so that's the order of the day. And the first thing is just to introduce speedrunning, just so people know who it is. Oh, what it is, sorry. So speedrunning, for the most part, is basically get from point A to point B, usually in certain different types of ways. So it can be either through glitches, through completing all missions in a game, through completing all races, different ways of doing it. Each game has its own different way. 100% can obviously be divided into finding all the collectibles and all the rest of it. Speedrun goes over many different categories. Some games have several, some games have one or two, and some just have the one. Now, in this case, for the case of speedrunning and all the rest of it for today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the racing games side of speedrunning. Now, for a lot of people, myself included, I enjoy racing game speedruns, but there's obviously those people out there that don't enjoy them, you know, and they have their own reasons, as do we. But in this case, we're going to hand it down to the rest of the guys that are in this call right now. So, the question to ask is, do racing games belong in speedrunning? So I will pass you guys over to, I think, who wants to go first? Lo? Should we start with you?
Sure, okay. I'm good with pressure, don't worry about it.
Okie doke.
The answer is yes.
They do belong in speedrunning.
Yes. Just like any other game except visual novels. They're literally just click to continue. They don't exist. They don't deserve to exist. But racing games do.
Okay. Let's go to Joseph next.
Well, obviously they do, because they're like any other games. You have to, well, you beat them, and there's obviously going to be faster ways of getting to the end goal, so yeah, it's just like any other game. It requires practice, and yeah.
Okay, let's go to Leviathan next. What are your thoughts, Leviathan?
Well, I think they do belong because you need skills to and to learn a certain way to beat the game as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think I can agree. I mean, my personal thoughts on it are that I think they do belong in speedrunning in general. I don't see any problem with them. I know a lot of people might give them crap and say, oh, they're rubbish and they're boring, which we'll get to in a minute, but for the most part, I think they do. I mean, they're just any other genre. I think if every other genre is in speedrunning, then I don't see why racing can't be. And finally, Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yes and no. It depends. I think games like arcade racers, rallying specifically, yes, definitely, they should be included. But games, say, simulation racers, I think they would be classed more as an auto-scroller. So I would say anything that you can manipulate, say, races, aka an arcade racer, or gets fastest stage times, as in a rally game, then yeah, they are absolutely fine. But otherwise, it is going to be difficult with, say, more realistic racing games to actually speedrun, because they pretty much go at the same sort of pace. Unless, of course, you were manipulating the rules of the game and using faster cars than the opposition, then yeah, fair enough, you can complete a game in XYZ amount of time. But I think really it should be more focused on more arcadey and rally games, because they show the actual skill then to complete a stage in the fastest possible time.
Okay, so that was an interesting opinion, Dan, which brings us on to our next part, which I need to get everyone's opinions on this real quick. So, how does everyone feel about speedruns and racing game speedruns? Do they feel that they get neglected compared to other speedruns? Yes or no? We'll go around the table, so we'll start with Joseph this time.
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that racing games as a genre is more of a niche thing than RPGs or action games. So if the general public isn't playing as many racing games as other genres, then it's their speedrunning scene is also not going to be as popular as, say, games like Pokemon or something like that.
Okay, Leviathan?
Yeah, I feel the same because it's not that action packed like CS:GO or any other shooter, and you don't need that much focus on that, so you kind of lose interest in it over time.
Lone?
They definitely are less appreciated and less known about in comparison to, you know, like your classics, like your N64 games, and, you know, Pokemon and all that stuff. But yeah, I definitely think they're quite lacking in terms of like awareness in the general speedrun population.
And finally, Dan.
I reckon they do, yeah. Well, we've seen, what was it? Burnout Paradise, that was run at AGDQ 2018.
Yeah.
And it was deemed one of the funniest and one of the best runs that they had in the whole marathon, and I agree with that. Again, it was arcade orientated. It was, you know, you had to complete certain missions actually in the game itself. And yeah, I think as, you know, a sim racer, from my own personal experience, yeah, it is a very niche market to get into. Not a lot of people enjoy racing games, motorsport in general. Some people find it boring. So it is going to be very difficult to actually get into that little niche there. But I believe that given the right circumstances, the right type of game, like I said, Burnout Paradise, more of those come into speedrunning marathons. I think that, you know, they should be a bigger following once they get their recognition, I would think.
That's another interesting opinion there from yourself, though. Like you said, though, you know, with how Burnout Paradise was in AGDQ, I think it was, that you mentioned.
Yeah, it was,
it's an interesting
AGDQ
run.
2018.
Yeah, it was, like you said, it was an interesting run that stood out, I think, and it's good that it got quite a bit of recognition. I mean, the game's, 10 years old anyway, so I think a lot of people probably recognised it for that reason, and the last proper, should we say in this case, as most people call it, the last proper Burnout game, because obviously that Burnout Crash or whatever came out afterwards, it is a Burnout game, but it doesn't really count and not many people remember it, probably. But in terms of, so we've covered the fact that they do get neglected, but why do we all think that it gets neglected so much, do we reckon? What's everyone's opinions on it? Again, we'll go around the board on this one, so we'll start with Joseph again and work our way down. So we'll start with you, Joseph.
Well, the thing is, I kind of already answered that. It just has to do with the general interest of racing games. I mean, I'd reckon that racing games were more popular like 20 years ago when Need for Speed was like really big. Not 20 years ago, like 15 years ago when games like Underground 2 were like massive and everyone was talking about them, everyone was playing them. But now that franchises like Need for Speed and Burnout and the Nightclub are just kind of dwindling down or not existing anymore, it's affected the overall popularity of racing games, and speedrunning is also affected as well.
That's very true. Leviathan?
Well, I'm saying the same, that the community who are playing or watching Twitch, for example, they want more action-packed gameplay other than staring at the screen, watching a guy playing driving a car, for example, for 4 hours straight.
Yeah. Lo? You're next.
How do we put it? I definitely think, to be honest, can't really think on it, to be honest. Yeah, I definitely think it. Not everyone understands the sort of skill that goes into high-level racing games. You could look at say, my carbon run and look at George's carbon run, and to the outside viewer, it looks mostly the same. You know, it doesn't look like there's a lot of difference, but when you look at it deep and you understand, like, you have the skill and all that, you can actually see how different they are, like how they take the corners, you know, how they, you know, I don't know, accelerate and all that sort of different stuff. I think they just don't understand the skill gap, and they just see everything as the same, which makes everyone sort of not as interested. Because it's like, oh, what's the point in watching this game? It just looks this run, it looks the same as this run, and they just don't really sort of see how it works sort of underneath.
And Dan?
Yeah, I agree with the others, really. I think it all depends on what game you're doing. Like I said, from personal experience, from racing multiple racing games in the past and this, that, and the other, I would rather watch a speedrun of a racing game that had mission elements to them. So, like I said, Burnout Paradise, Need for Speed Underground series, say Driver Parallel Lines, games like that, because they do have the driving element and racing element, but they also have missions that break that up, so it would actually be more entertaining for the viewer. Games like Assetto Corsa, Forza Motorsport, this, that, and the other, I wouldn't deem them speedrun worthy, because again, it's set laps that you have to do, and it would be classed more as an auto-scroller. And there's only so much that you can do with simulation games, but if they were broken up with action elements, say the Driver series, and this, that, and the other, they're absolutely fine, and rally games in general, because rally games, you need the concentration, you need the skill set to do the stages, to get the fastest possible lap time. So they would be high up on the genre for future speedrunning games. As for the others, not so much.
Okie doke. Very interesting opinion all across the board. But about the same sort of opinion I'm getting from a lot of you guys about it being maybe not being, in some aspects it might not be as interesting as other categories and other genres and things like that. That sort of vibe, is that correct from everybody? So yeah. that sort of opinion, it's not like a genuine one, just like a bit of an overall opinion.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, on my opinion on this, I've just been thinking about it on my end, and I think it's not hard to see why they get neglected compared to other speedruns, but I think all speedruns, regardless of what genre, should kind of all be treated the same. I mean, granted that something like, say, an RPG that might take 6.5 hours to run, or as far as, you know, say, in the case of Grand Theft Auto, for example, those games can take anywhere from like 50 minutes to 6.5 hours, maybe 10 hours, depending on what sort of, you know, category is being run. But in terms of like the racing stuff, I feel that it's kind of a bit odd that people neglect it in that regard, because I mean, there's some racing games where they'll use tricks and something. I mean, here's a good example that I could probably use. So, as granted as most racing games that I played don't use glitches, say in some games, for example the Carbon Crate Rally series, in the first two games you could use cuts, so you're literally just cutting across the track because the game was not that stingy. And then in games like the third one, the fourth, 2005, you can actually skip rallies, so it allows the games to be run much faster. So technically there is tricks and things like that, stuff that you'd find in other genres of speedruns and other sort of games. I get, like I said, I get for the reason of, and I particularly understand Dan's reason as well with the whole simulation, you know, like it doesn't seem speedrun worthy, if you can say it that way. But it's kind of, like I said, it's a bit of an oddball really. It's kind of, everyone's on the fence with racing games. A lot of people are either into them or they're not, depending on what sort of person they are and, you know, like whether they're really interested or not. And just quickly, the last thing as well is just from you guys. Does anybody here have any particular favourite speed game or category for a certain game at all, by any chance?
My personal favourite speed game would probably controversially be Rivals, Need for Speed Rivals, because that's the game I put the most time into and sort of the most effort.
Okay.
But I do get occasionally frustrated because it's just how works when you're trying to PB and you have a really good PB. But that's just sort of normal speedrun stuff.
Okay. Anybody else got any favourite ones?
Well, for me it would be Dirt 2. This was the first rally game that I played as a younger version of me, and really grew to my heart. So, and I spent a lot of effort making a route for it and speedrunning it.
Funnily enough, how me and you found each other, if I remember correctly. And let's see, Joseph, Dan, any particular favourite game that you like to watch? Doesn't have to be race, it can be anything. Is there any particular one that you enjoy?
Well, personally, I've never taken the opportunity to speedrun anything yet. Big point, yet. Hopefully I will do in the near future, but for me, I don't know. See,
series if you wish. Yeah, you can
yeah.
have a
I mean,
series.
I'm very. I grew up playing, racing games and RPGs, strategy games, stuff like that. So I actually quite enjoy RPG speedruns because I can see how back in the day I played the game, say, to 100%, and it took me days and days and days. And to see the glitches or the manipulation that they use in RPGs, for example, Final Fantasy VII, you can complete the game in literally 4 hours. It's incredible. It took me weeks to complete, can be whittled down to little, then, a couple of hours. And to see the skill set and the work and dedication that goes into not just racing games, RPGs, strategy, this and the other, but to all speedrunning games in general, is pretty bloody incredible, if I may say.
And Joseph, you got any particular favourites, whether you've done them or watched them?
The ones that I've done, probably no, not Dirt 2, CMR 2. Mainly because it's very interesting seeing the progression of all the tricks in the game, the shortcuts and that kind of thing, and seeing people discover them and making the time lower and lower. It's a very interesting development, and I think anybody can learn it. It just requires some practice, and overall makes for a very interesting run when you can see what sort of impressive driving techniques people pull off just from practice.
And I think on my end, there's a lot of different games in my list that I could say have been my favourite speedrunning game, but funnily enough, it's one that I've been watching a lot of, and I think I watched them years ago, but for me still stands as the number one. It's not the number one most speedrun game in the world, but it's one of my highlights and one of my favourites. But it'd probably be for me Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And long story short on mine, I've not got a history with the game. I used to love playing it as a kid, and obviously when the parents were around, and all that sort of stuff. But like, my mate's brother's Xbox, I used to play on it and stuff like that if he'd go out for a night. That sort of stuff, and I used to play it for a good few hours. But for me, the game used to, like how you said, Dan, with the Final Fantasy taking days to finish and seeing someone do it in 4 hours. It was the same with me with Grand Theft Auto, with Vice City, because the fact is that I must have took, again, same reasoning, like it must have took me days to finish the game just regular, without any glitches or anything. And yet you see these guys online that are doing the game in under an hour. They're like 50 minutes to do everything, but it's using glitching.
If you're using a SSU, you can do it in 10.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of one of those things that makes you think, Jesus, is that really how fast you can finish this game? But then again, back in those days, unlike now, there's always them sort of games nowadays I think have fail safes, so it stops you from glitching through stuff. And I mean, games still are glitchy now as they ever were, but back in those days, these glitches, these techniques, I doubt anybody was doing all this replay stuff and all the rest of it, or learned to do it back in 2002 when the game came out. I mean, I could be wrong, but for me personally, I don't think... I mean, speedrunning's been around for a fair bit, and it's not just for GTA, but for every game, probably. But, I mean, over its history, I think we've learned a lot about tricks, glitches, techniques, you name it. And I don't think racing games are any different to any of this. Like I mentioned at the start, it's no different to any other category. The fact that it gets neglected so much is kind of one thing that, in a way, infuriates me, but I can also understand the point. It being quite long and repetitive and that sort of stuff. But overall, I think today we've had a pretty good discussion of it. And to everyone that's watching at home or on YouTube at the moment, what are your guys' thoughts and opinions on what we've mentioned? Do you agree with what we said? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thanks to all my guests for joining me on this one. So to Lone, Leviathan, Joseph and Dan. And yeah, until the next video, whenever that may be, thanks very much for watching and see you guys later. So from all of us, bye bye.